Hello and good morning, everyone. Hello, hello. For those of you who, number one, welcome to Kaleidoscopic Conversations. Sometimes it's a live stream, sometimes it is an actual live discussion that we have in the evening. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Lepora Lindsay. I am a learning and development professional, a workshop facilitator, a trainer, all those wonderful things, but it's not about me today. It's about the conversation of modern workplace. And today I am joined by Ashley Bro. And Ashley, I would love for you to share a little bit more about yourself, to introduce yourself to people.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, first off, Laporta, again, thank you so much for having me. Everyone, I'm Ashley Bro. I like to always say the last name is a very real one. It is Bro. I'm an organizational development consultant. And so I like to help with all things personal and professional development. I've worked in a variety of roles, but really kind of helping people have those aha moments inside and outside the four walls is kind of my jam, as I say. So, yes, I'm super excited to be here and just super excited to kind of have those conversations today.
Thank you so much, Ashley. So, for those of you who are joining us, whatever platforms you're joining us from, feel free to type in the chat, let us know that you're here, or even if you're watching this on replay, be sure to do like hashtag replay and say what you got to say. That way we know that you are here with us. And hopefully, if you get something useful, be sure to share that with us as well, because we don't know unless you tell us. So, today we are talking about how to define success in the modern workplace. And so, Ashley, I'm so glad to have you here to talk a little bit about maybe some of your experiences and what you've seen kind of in the industry. But I'll start off with this question. And that is, how do you think well, number one, how do you think society as a whole defines success in the workplace?
I was going to say, I think that's the greatest question to always start with is how do you define success? I think myself personally, I define success as you have found your why and you have found your joy in whatever it may be. And maybe it's inside and outside the four walls as I talk about, but kind of getting to that, what does success look like? I think, and how we came to this idea of success in the workplace. I think it's something that's just been kind of ingrained in our brains over and over. Of to say you are successful means you've reached a certain title, you've gained a certain amount of salary, and you have a certain amount of people under you, or whatever the case may be. And I think that that was so often the picture that was painted for success for so many types of people. And so I think luckily we're breaking out of that. But I think so often when we talk about success, people say, well, I want to be, a manager, or I want to be a VP, or I want to make X amount of money, sort of thing. And so I think it's really helping people to reshape what success looks like and how that makes us feel. Because
Right.
I think that people forget that sometimes people have reached those titles, have reached those salaries, and they're still not happy. And they're like, well,
Yeah.
I thought this was going to make me happy. And so they're realizing that something else was maybe missing there, or that's not really what their passion was after. So
Yeah, I love that. And, I definitely can see what you're saying as far as with, I feel like there's almost like this, there's like this administrative way that we can grow, which I typically see as like the upward promotion or the career ladder. But then there's also like this technical knowledge based way that we can grow, which I see as more like a wider base of we grow by just becoming more knowledgeable, becoming more of an expertise or a specialist in our field versus working our way up. And they're both ways of growth. And they're both ways, as you said, perhaps as people define their success. But I think it's really important to kind of keep that open scope of everything. So when we're talking about one of the things you kind of mentioned as far as with that's how it was in the past as a whole, like workforce development society, where do you feel like that change has happened within how we define, or do you even feel like it's changing?
yeah, I hope it's changing. I feel like I always say that, how your LinkedIn feed comes in, how your social media, feeds come in, it may be your own little bubble. I think my
Yeah.
bubble is slowly starting to see the change. But I do think the one thing that changed it all, and you'd be naive not to mention it, is COVID. I think a lot of
Mm,
people realized during that time of I don't need to be spending this much time away from my family or the things that I love
Yeah.
to define success in my life. And so I think it's with COVID and the shift of the market and the shift of everything that happened with that, and people working remotely and teams not being maybe as in person together as much, but still reaching success in that organization.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think leaders are realizing I need to put my people as people first rather than how do I make them the most producing, individual contributor I can, sort of thing. And so I think it's really about helping the leaders from the top change that view of success so it kind of filters down to their
Mm,
individual contributors, because I always say those foot soldiers, those 9 to 5s, they look up to their leaders. They do look up to their leaders to say
right.
you're doing well, you are successful. And I always give credit to someone who's been in their role for 15 years, has so much wealth of knowledge, but their ability to continually learn, to continually be flexible and adapt to the environment and the markets and the change and all of that is what makes them successful in that role. And again, makes them impactful in that organization overall.
I feel like you said so many good things in that little bit that you shared as far I'm being serious. Like I heard like as far as being people centered, I heard, creating that culture as far as not even just modeling that behavior in leadership, but also communicating that as well. And then that took me down as you were speaking a whole nother path as far as like how often are we or teams communicating with everyone or engaging with everyone, like all of that has an effect on how we view ourselves and on how we view our success. And even though success is a very individualized process, we can't deny the fact that there are external factors that also kind of influence how we view things or how we view those accomplishments. So thanks so much for sharing that, Ashley. That's good.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So when we're talking about the role of engagement in achieving success in the workplace, what would you say as a perhaps as a tip or just something that people should think of if they're not necessarily in those executive leadership roles, but they're still trying to create success for themselves in the workplace? What does that look like? What actions or behavioral changes are needed?
I always, I love that question, Lapora. And I would say if you are wanting to have success within your individual role, like you said, and you're
Mhm.
not in that manager, supervisor, whatever role, I always say ask the question of, is there something else that I can either create, maybe be innovative with, maybe be I always say not recreate the wheel, but
Right.
take something and say, can I make this more efficient, more effective for our patients, whatever the case may be, and kind of owning something. And with that, having a leader that says, take this and take the autonomy with it and own it, and you be in charge of that, and giving people that ability to kind of, again, be the leader in their own little projects, in their own little things that they do. I always say too, a lot of times our leaders are, not not accessible, but they're in meetings, they're not maybe on the floor with us, and in that, hey, I need a quick question answered, sort of thing. So you as yourself with those behavioral changers can be that leader. You can say, how can I help, looking at that person and say, hey, this is what I've learned from the past, this is how I would maybe suggest it, sort of thing. So I've always said you don't need to have that title to be a leader within your actual team. They'll look to you with that when you are coming to people with positive intent, with that open conflict, with that true, clear and transparent communication. That's what people look for in a leader. And if you're able to just have those behaviors as an individual, kudos to you, man. People are going to come, flooding anyways. So
Yeah.
I think that in it is what I would give to people, is to say, you have the ability to define that road. And I think it's also speaking up when things maybe aren't right. If you are that person that, is the leader, so to say, that maybe has been there for a while, or has the ability to see, how things can be more efficient or productive for the team, to the ability to have the approach to say, I've noticed these things, or the team has came to me and mentioned X, Y, and Z, and advocating for yourself and advocating for maybe the processes that you do on the day to day.
Mm. Yes. So you mentioned as far as with defining outside of that role, I think that's such a huge one. That was one of the first things I caught. And when I think about that, I think about, we have our job descriptions as far as, what we are to do. And one of the things that I haven't seen it in a job description, but it may be out there somewhere,
Yeah.
where if you aren't getting the intel that you need or the information that you need to be able to make that choice, in a way, almost leading up, as far as with, scheduling those meetings or sending those emails to be able to get that intel that you need. But the other part that I really would like to delve in quicker, is that speaking up piece, because I know that it can be really, really hard, especially if, or maybe I could just be speaking for myself. I'll
I
take
don't
that.
think you are. No.
Because that's something, especially when you are not in a, and we'll just stick with the people who aren't necessarily in those leadership roles, because they're trying to figure out, okay, how can I be successful? So when it comes to something like speaking up, how how do you, and I know you kind of covered it, but and if you don't feel comfortable with going into more depths, that's okay. But do you have like an example of what that looks like for people who are afraid because of their position, because their title doesn't necessarily define them as being someone who has the
Yeah.
authority or the power to say certain things, but you see the need because you're doing the groundwork? How do you
Yeah.
get there?
I would have two tips. The first one that we utilize within my organization now a lot is something called a discussion planner. I would tell people to start with maybe the problem, the question you have, and actually write down, this is what I would like to say, and have a good scenario of they understand, we come to a great solution, and here's the things. Maybe a middle solution of you need to come to some great compromise. Maybe there is a little bit of back and forth, but again, a common ground solution. And maybe a third solution where it's saying at the end, you know what, I do think we need to have this conversation at another time, or I think we need to maybe rethink priorities, whatever the case may be. And again, having that discussion planner for yourself can really alleviate, if you will, the stress going in. So at least you can somewhat plan what's going to happen. Again, is it always going to be picture perfect? Is it going to be word for word? No. But it gives you a sense of, if this happens, I'm going to be okay. And I at least kind of expected this was going to happen. I wrote it out. Like, I kind of expected this was going to happen. It's okay. The second tip I have to everyone, and I have to remind myself of this all the time, our approach is so important. If
Mhm.
we go to someone and say, "What the F?" we're probably not going to get a great response. We're probably not going to get people saying, okay, let me sit down and actually have a great, respectable conversation with you. No, they're probably going to say, maybe we'll come back in 24 hours. But if we
Mm.
go to someone and we say, hey, when you have a moment, I'd really like to talk to you about something. And it may be uncomfortable for the first 2 minutes, or the first two sentences I'm going to say are going to be really difficult. But
Yeah.
the rest of this conversation, I'd really like to focus on X, Y, and Z, or finding a common ground that we can both agree on. I think that is something that is so missed. And so often when we talk about communication, is the approach.
Mhm.
We can't come with the approach of anger and, frustration. We really have to come from this approach of positive intent,
Yeah.
and really telling these people, this is my genuine concern or question, because this affects my day-to-day activities, my team, whatever the case may be. So again, just presenting the facts, and those discussion planners, like you said, at the end of it, you'll remind yourself, I'm going to be okay. I
Yeah.
made it through that. And I kind of expected this to happen because I kind of wrote it out. And again, there's next steps from that. And that's a whole different conversation. And maybe that's a
Yeah.
one up. But again, I always say, even just writing it out kind of helps people be like, whew, well, I kind of expected this and to go, one way or another. So
Yeah. I absolutely love that, because number one, I feel like it kind of defines, when we're talking about success in the workplace, it defines in a way having a successful conversation, because it's not necessarily about getting the outcome that you desire, but it's about you're seeing a need, you're planning for it, and you're stating it. And whatever
mhm,
happens at that point happens. One of the other things that I've done something similar. I've never had the title for it as far as a discussion planner, but I really like that. For me, not only writing it out, but sometimes I have to speak it out. And I'm so grateful for my husband, because sometimes for him in the past, I'll say things and he'll just ask me questions. He'll ask me questions to get a better understanding of what I'm trying to say. And for me, that helps me, because now it's what I'm hearing in my head and what I'm saying, I may not necessarily be communicating as clearly. And so
Yeah.
just to add on to what you said, that's something for me that's extremely helpful because I do stay in my head like a lot. And so when I articulate things, it's not necessarily as I thought it was in my brain. In my brain, it's beautiful. Sometimes when it comes out, it's just not as good.
Yes, yes. In my brain, everything is beautiful and I've won everything. No, I'm just kidding. But I do think again, and like you said, talking it out with someone who may not be involved, like you said, who is a third party, who's like, does this make sense, sort of thing.
Mhm.
And I always say, take the feelings out of it. Not that you can't have feelings and not that feelings are not valid. They
Right.
so are. But once we've identified our feelings, we have to say, what are we going to do with these? And how do we advocate for ourselves in a more positive manner?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So, for anyone who is just now turning in, I am joined by Ashley Bro, organizational development consultant, and we're talking about modern success in the workplace. And we're talking about what that looks like because it looks different for everyone, right? And especially when you're in roles where there's not necessarily, where society as a whole might not necessarily define it as being successful. So, regardless of your position, regardless of your title, what are you doing in order to be able to define success in the workplace? And Ashley just covered some really good some tips and tools as far as about speaking up and how that can be done in a successful manner. All right, so if you missed it, you can always go back and catch the beginning of that. But we're going to keep moving forward. And if you have questions, you just feel free to put them in the chat because we want to hear from you, whether it's now or later. Let's hear from you. Um,
Absolutely.
Ashley, the other thing that you and I kind of had this conversation before, and I feel like this may be kind of providing another aspect of success, and that is, addressing problems without immediate solutions. We've kind of had this conversation where there was a saying, I don't know if it's as popular, but there is a, don't bring a problem without a solution, right?
Yep. Yeah. Otherwise, you're just complaining.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yep.
But I feel like, and let me know if I'm recalling the conversation incorrectly, but I feel like a lot of times when you don't have an immediate solution, but you see a problem, but because you don't have an immediate solution, you're just like, well, I don't see anything, so I'm not going to say anything because
Hmm.
I don't know how I can help. So I'm just
Hmm.
going to stop it right there. I don't want to hear your thoughts.
Yes, no, I do remember that conversation, and I do remember us saying how, much pressure you can feel when you do see something that you say this is really putting a damper on either the processes that we do or the culture of our team. Like, we see this, but
Mhm.
I don't have a solution or the ability to step up and say, this is what I see as the problem, because I don't have a solution for it. Or if there is a solution for it, maybe having, a one-on-one with the individual regarding the toxic behavior. I'm not in the position to have that. And so I think that that also falls into a psychological safe team where we have the ability to step up and say, I see something is wrong. I don't know the answer to it, but I need to let this team know that this is what's going on and this is what it's affecting, sort of thing. Um, and yes, I do think that that saying, unfortunately, is still up and going, if you will. Probably not as popular, but I do think it puts this, negativity in people's brains of, well, I'm not good enough because I don't have the solution for this. I just see the problem. Maybe I am a naysayer because I only see the problems and no solution, sort of thing. So I think that when we talk about, that verbiage of you have to have a solution, it leaves people lingering of, well, if I don't have a solution, then like you said, I just don't think I should speak up. And then it just turns into, I always say, like a big snowball.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you have all these people with potentially somebody else has a solution and they're not even sure like what the solution goes to. They're just like, this would be really good, but I don't really see a business case for it. So,
Yes, or I always say sometimes your solution is part A and someone has part B and someone else has
oh,
part C. And unless you talk it out, you're not realizing
yeah.
you're all seeing the exact same situation, exact same problem, but you've looked at it from different perspective, different angles to kind of see how can we make this better. And unfortunately, when we don't speak up because we don't think we have parts A, B, and C, we're really missing out, I think, in those moments to say, this is a problem. We can fix this in the now, rather than 6 months down the line where it's like, now it's affected, KPIs, it's affected the actual objective of, the sales objectives, all of the things. So I do think that unfortunately that saying is still around. But again, I do think with the times it's slowly but surely going away.
And I'm,
Hopefully.
oh, I know, right? And I'm curious, like whether y'all respond now or later. Like, do you think whether or not you agree with us, like it's really just about kaleidoscopic conversations is about different viewpoints and how we can share those viewpoints in order for us all to grow. So, do you think that you have to have a solution for every problem that you present? And if so, share why. And if you don't think that you need to have a solution for everyone, also share why, because these are the types of conversations that need to be had in the workplace, in the professional development setting, in order for each of us to find how we grow. Kind of sticking, going back to what you said, Ashley, in regards to having like all of these different parts of a solution. And I feel like when it comes to professional development as well, it's very similar, where we have all of these different parts, and a mixture of all of those different things. It is what makes each of us who we are, in addition to our experiences. But we really won't have that unless we're able to share. Oh wow. So this has been a really great conversation. I don't want to end it though without Ashley you sharing a little bit more about how people can reach out to you if they want to connect with you on any of the social media platforms, and anything else you'd like to share.
Awesome. Yes, thank you again so much, Laura, for having me. You can follow me on LinkedIn, I believe it's, or connect with me. I think I'm under Ashley O Bro. You can also go to my website, which is just ashleybro.com. You can kind of see all my little funky stuff that I have going on there. So those are two great ways to get a hold of me. You can email me through that website or through LinkedIn. So again, thank you so much for having me and having such a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Ashley. And I forgot to brag on Ashley earlier. So we're actually both in Omaha, Nebraska, right? And here's the first conversation that I had with Ashley. I don't even know how we connected on LinkedIn. That's just how LinkedIn works. Maybe because we're both in the
Mhm.
same area, but we connected in person, and I was just like, oh my gosh, she is filled with just so much wisdom, so much different insight, and people have to know a little bit more about what Ashley does, a little bit more about Ashley perspectives. And so I just wanted to share that. I probably should have shared that at the beginning. But yeah, we haven't my bad.
I love it. No, I greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate it, Lapora. And again, just even connecting with you has been wonderful. So same kudos goes back to Lapora. She has wonderful, you must follow her on LinkedIn, her little snippets of personal and professional development, her little images that I always just nuggets of knowledge I
Thank
take
you.
with me. So always amazing.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Ashley. Well, y'all, this is our time here. You know me, I am short-winded. So between that 15-minute to 30-minute mark, we're gonna close it down. But that doesn't mean you can't connect with Ashley. It doesn't mean that you can't connect with me and ask those questions or continue those conversations. All right, everyone, please remember to stay adding value, and